When you lean into vulnerability, you're actually saying, I'm human, I'm imperfect, but I care, and I'm committed. And that makes you relatable. That builds a bond and impacts client loyalty. Hello and welcome back to StartCS. I'm Delia, and today we're asking a question that few leaders and teams are willing to ask. Is vulnerability a yes or a no in business and customer success? On one hand, vulnerability feels risky. Admitting that you don't know, exposing weak spots, letting emotions in. On the other hand, Brené Brown's research reminds us that the courage to be vulnerable is the heart of innovation, trust, and connection. So in the next couple of minutes, we will explore how vulnerability plays out in customer success. When it's a strength, when it's a liability, and most importantly, how you and your team can use it purposefully. Not as a gimmick, but as a strategic advantage. First, let's clarify what we mean by vulnerability. Brené Brown defines it as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. In a business and customer success context, that might look like admitting to a customer that you don't have all the answers yet, or acknowledging that your solution is not perfect, or letting your team see you struggle through a renewal risk. Many organizations fear vulnerability because they assume it equals weakness. But Brown flips that by saying vulnerability is not winning or losing, it's having the courage to show up when you cannot control the outcome. So, yes, vulnerability is a yes when it's genuine, when it builds trust rather than undermines it. As an example, imagine a customer success team that noticed a drop in usage for a major client. The CSM proactively said that we're tracking this down, and I'll be honest with you. We don't know yet what's causing it. I will involve the product team and we will come back with a plan. That admission of uncertainty did not hurt the relationship. It strengthened it because the customer felt seen and shared in the journey. But here's the flip side, which brings us to when vulnerability is not helpful. If it's unintentional, unmanaged, or comes without follow-through, it can erode trust, create confusion, or even look like incompetence. Brown's point is vulnerability must be paired with boundaries, clarity, and action. In her words, vulnerability minus boundaries is not vulnerability. In customer success, that might look like telling a customer, we're really struggling here, and then disappearing. Or a customer success manager exposes problems but hasn't got a mitigation plan. That kind of raw vulnerability without boundaries can trigger customer anxiety and not trust. So the rule of thumb is vulnerability with accountability, with follow-through, and with structure. Here's a quick checklist for teams. Do you share issues early with a plan for how you will address them? Do you acknowledge what you don't know while committing to find out? Do you protect your customers' confidence by pairing transparency with competence? When yes, vulnerability is a strategic asset. When no, it becomes a risk. Now, here are 3 tools to implement vulnerability wisely in your customer success culture. 1. Practice safe disclosures. Maybe you can even create a channel where team members can report one issue they face, customer related or internal, with one action they will take. This means transparency plus action equals credibility. 2. Use vulnerability to build connection and trust. Brené Brown writes, vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy. If we want deeper and more meaningful lives, vulnerability is the path. Now, in customer success, when a team shows their work is not perfect and invites the customer into solving it, you actually move from vendor to partner. And that's how connection grows. And 3, institutionalize it with playbooks and roles. For example, when stakeholder changes happen, you might say to the customer, "We noticed that your executive sponsor changed. Here is our playbook for transition. We will schedule a 30-minute workshop with a new sponsor within a couple of days, blah, blah, blah." That's vulnerability, meaning we know this change matters, we have the system, we have a response, and we take action. This kind of practices transform vulnerability from a moment of risk into a culture of trust. So to answer the main question, vulnerability in business and customer success, my answer is yes. It's important when it's done intentionally, and no when it lacks structure and follow through. When you lean into vulnerability, you're actually saying, "I'm human, I'm imperfect, but I care and I'm committed." And that makes you relatable. That builds a bond and impacts client loyalty. And that enables innovation because you're willing to say, "We tried, we missed, now let's adjust." Brené Brown said, again, the courage to be vulnerable is not about winning or losing, it's about the courage to show up when you cannot predict or control the outcome. Now, in leadership, that means that when things go sideways, the first reaction is not to hide or to spin. The first reaction is to show up. You own the moment, you invite the customer in, and you act. And that's exactly where vulnerability becomes strength and not weakness. That's where risk becomes opportunity. And your team, they get to operate not from fear of failure, but from learning, connection, and growth. Vulnerability is courage in action. It's a yes when it's structured, intentional, and paired with accountability. And it's a no when it's unmanaged, unplanned, or inconsistent. Now, if you lead a customer success team, ask, how are we using vulnerability to build trust with customers? How are we protecting it with systems and follow through? Thank you for listening to this new episode of StartCS. If it hits a chord, share it with a colleague or your team and explore where you can be more vulnerable wisely in the service of stronger customer relationships. See you next time when we continue this journey of ensuring customer retention in business one step at a time.